This is Roots in Lowell, the Mill City Girls podcast, and we're at episode number 7. All right. So, in today's episode, I know that I'm saying today because when you're listening to this, it's today, right? It's today. Right now, it's today. All right. So, we're going to be talking with all our new executive directors, co-executive directors, rather. So, there are Courtney McSparron, Ali Jacobs, and Dai Kim. All right. And basically, we went from a one executive director, top person who was Jessica Wilson. She's stepped out of that position as of January into a 3-person executive director role. Each of them has a different area they focus on. They're all being executive directors. So we're going to be talking about how this transition has been going for them. And also what are their focus areas, and also kind of what is their vision for the organization and everything that's in this new way of direction that a lot of nonprofits are going on into. So I don't want to hold you up much more longer, and let's start. All right, Courtney, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Enrique?
I'm doing great. This is actually a very interesting episode because we haven't really introduced the new EDs in the organization. I know last year, the very first episode actually was an introduction of this program, and I did it with Jessica. We talked a long time. We actually talked for 40 minutes on how she got into the organization and everything. And actually, this is actually one of the things I want to ask you, because I know out of the 3 EDs, you're the one that's just the newer person that just got in here. So pretty quick introduction, and how did Courtney get into MCG? How was that I would say that journey into becoming an ED at MCG, or just getting into MCG?
Sure. So I moved to Lowell during the pandemic in 2020, and I had liked Lowell before. We always hung out here. We always went to the kinetic sculpture race. But as soon as I got here and spent some time here and started getting to know the people of Lowell and all the events and all of the positive energy in Lowell, I realized I really wanted to work in Lowell as well as live in Lowell. And so I started looking for a job that would let me use some of my background in education, and was doing good work in Lowell, was very Lowell-centric. Yeah. And I very luckily found Mill City Grows. I feel very lucky. And got interviewed by the staff here, including Jessica. And here I am. And I was director of education through last year before coming on as co-executive director.
So, talking about that, so you said you were the director of education, right?
Yep.
But as you know, because it's a new year, some changes have happened in our organization from the top, right? You are also now one of our 3 co-EDs, right? Executive directors, right? So what is going to be your specific focus? Because if I were to just guess out there, if I'm just, not everyone's going to be focusing on the same thing. Right? So what is going to be your focus when you're doing this new ED role?
Yeah. I would say I get to focus on the most important thing at Mill City Grows, which is our staff. So I've taken on the supervision of the community gardens team, as well as our advocacy team, as well as our development team. And I've always managed our school education and CSA. And I just think about things like professional development and performance, and how we're making sure, we're doing the right thing and letting the whole world know how great we are. So I get to focus on most of the staff side of things.
Awesome. And so these, I think for a lot of people, right, they learn about this changes, right, just very recently in the last month or so. But I know this has not just been new, obviously you can just one day just change, right?
That would be fun.
Yeah, it would be fun, right? But my question actually, just so kind of get an insider's perspective, right? Getting it's how is that process been for you?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I think Ali, Dai, and I have known about this transition probably longer than most folks. And I have to say, it's a little scary to take on a big leadership role, especially when you're newer to an organization. And so Dai, Ali, and I got to talk about it a lot before it ever became public or something we talked even to the staff about. And I can't imagine doing it with any other two people. And I'm so glad that they were there and willing because, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would be as successful if I didn't have a team like them. So I think they were really the catalyst for me saying yes and taking on this, this role.
That's cool. And then, so that is also like very interesting because we've been saying, so it's like 3 EDs, right? With different focus on, which you just talked about. And then the other thing is like, obviously, I think a lot of people have not really experienced that before.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there are many places in the world really you can say like in this type of work or organization or anything that have this model going on. How is this model different to anything that you worked on now that you kind of been immersed in it and you can say in a sense that you're a pioneer in this new thing? And I'm gonna say that because it's it's still like a very new concept, right? That's kind of why I'm saying it like that.
Yeah. Well, I've never done anything like this, so I've definitely had wonderful coworkers and people that I've worked very closely with, but I think I've never worked as a leader in such a shared way. So I do think it's new. I think the 3-person model is very different. I have to say a lot of nonprofits are going to co-directorship. We got to talk to a lot of them as we got to read about a lot of them as we were doing this research, and now we're kind of meeting with a lot of them and asking them what they've learned, what went well, what didn't go well. So I do think we're getting there in terms of like finding leadership models that are sustainable and that people can do for a long time and feel really supported in. And I think this is one of the ways to do it. It's totally new for me, and I'm learning different things about it all the time, and different things about myself and Ali and Dai and how we think and how we make decisions. And it's been really cool, but I do think this is the future of leadership, that it will be broader and that it will be shared. And I do think is much more sustainable way to go about things. Yeah.
And I think also like for the individuals in these roles, you know what I mean? Like there's sometimes like the burnout factor, right?
Yeah.
So I think that also, sometimes when it falls under one person, it's very different than when it falls under like, you can share that, right? Yeah. So I
think so. And if you have a good team, it feels, totally different. You always have somebody to bounce ideas off of. You always have people to say like, hey, this crazy thing happened. What do you think? You never have to do any of that alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So, now that we're kind of like getting that perspective, what are some special perks that you, as the ED number, actually just whichever other numbers, but like your focus is kind of more on the education side. I kind of forgot that part, right? But yeah, like
what are things?
What are the projects that you're excited for in 2024?
Well, I'm super excited about the project we're working on together.
Which one is that?
Which is getting the kitchen kind of more available to the community, more known in the community, having some events in there. I think it's an incredible space, and I feel like we've been spoiled because we're the only ones using it. And it should really be a place where the whole community should come and can come. And so I'm happy to get that off the ground. I think every single person in the organization is going to do something with our Pawtucket Farm Wildlife Sanctuary in the next few years. So just thinking about what kind of programs are going on there, how are we going to use the educational space? I'm hopeful that we'll get a community garden built this year, if not very soon after. So I think that's going to take a lot of our year to think about that project. And I'm just really excited to keep all the education, school education, adult education things going this year. Yeah.
All right. That is awesome. And I'm going to leave it with a broader question.
Okay.
So this broader question is kind of, I think it's like the more philosophical rather.
Yeah.
I don't know if philosophical is the right word, but it's kind of more like the visionary word. So, right? So visionary is the word. So it's kind of like, how do you see the future of the organization? Thinking,
Yeah.
but I'm doing it thinking of this on this model and all the things like, because it's kind of funny. Last year when I interviewed Jessica, I mean, I think at that moment this decision had been made, right? And I really want to see like what is like, you know, like at least from your perspective, right? Like, and this new role and this new leadership and this new, you know, all these projects are. We were talking last year about this in the very like, oh wow, this is coming up, right? And now like, it's like, oh, we already bought that farm that we talked about last year. That we're like,
It's here.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the thing. How do you see, with, you know, talking about the kitchen, talking about this new garden, talking about the new farm, talking about like this collaboration we're doing, you know, like how well, I mean with that you know, talking with that farm beef, you know, Pawtucket Farm Wildlife Sanctuary, and then how do you see that going forward? I think that's like the thing.
Yeah, that is a really big question, Enrique.
I know.
I think for me, if I think globally, I know we just talked about the leadership model, but I would really love to see Mill City Grows, and it has always done this, which is I think why maybe one of the reasons it has a really special place in the heart of a lot of people in Lowell. It thinks about the people who work here, and they want to make this work really sustainable. And I know that we're taking on so much, and I want to make sure that this is a place that not only do I want to work for a very long time, but everybody does. And that we're always thinking of ways to take on these new initiatives and make sure that the folks working here are happy and fulfilled and supported. And so that's really important to me, kind of no matter what we do. Yeah. I think this is hard.
I know. That's just, you know.
That's why it's philosophical. Yeah. I think too, you know, things have really changed post-COVID. I know we say it a lot,
that is true.
but it is true. It is true for the schools that we work in really intimately. I think more people are interested in like coming out and doing group events and being involved. And I just want to make sure that we're like capitalizing on that and like inviting people back into our space. I started here at a time where people really didn't want to come out to a lot of things. They were still very hesitant, especially if you we're like cooking food and being very close to other people. And so I'm hopeful that we're kind of at a new place where we can worry a little less about that and more about like being together and doing things together and moving forward. And I'm really interested to see, you know, I think the truth is like the first, 6 months or so of this co-leadership model is us figuring out a lot of stuff. And I think that I want you to ask me this question again in 6 months or 8 months.
That's a great idea.
When we've had some time to figure stuff out. Yeah.
Part 2 of this episode.
Yeah. That would be good.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Enrique.
Thank you for taking time to do this on a Friday afternoon.
I'm done.
Because, I know it's Friday, but thank you for doing this.
Yeah, of course.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. I'm sitting here now with Ali. I'm sitting here with Dai. They're the other two EDs, which, if you don't know, it's executive directors. So
we're called co-executive directors.
Yeah, co-executive directors,
which we frequently abbreviate to co-eds, which
co-eds.
I think is pretty problematic.
Yeah, it sounds like a dorm, if you guys, you know what I mean? So if that's kind of what I think when you say co-ed, right? But anyway, so I'm going to start with you, Ali.
Okay.
So, and actually, you can like intervene. I mean, not intervene, but you can jump
interrupt
in, right? Whenever it's a conversation,
I more
right?
frequently interrupt you, but feel free.
Yeah. So, as new EDs, I know like I already talked with Courtney, right? Obviously, there's different focus areas for each one of y'all because there's many different areas that we cover. So, what are your focus areas are going to be in these new roles as EDs?
Sure. I'll go first.
Yeah.
I'm focused on the exciting world of nonprofit administration, which involves a number of government websites.
Yeah.
Financial administration, so paying bills, paying us payroll. We're coming up on our annual audit, which is a pretty cool thing. Nonprofits get audited every year if you're over a certain threshold. And yeah, it's a lot of like really specific tracking of money, and also all of the legal things, the insurance, budgets. I'm also working a lot on government grants.
Yeah.
So both writing them with Rebecca. Rebecca's really doing the lion's share of grant writing, but I'm doing a lot of the figuring out which ones we want to go after, helping to bullet point what we're going to apply for, writing all of the budgets for those, and then administrating them. So after we receive them, also figuring out
Like
how we're
how they're
going
gonna use them.
to execute the grant. Yep.
That's what's up.
And build them out.
All right. And how are you, Dai?
First and foremost, Enrique, thanks for having us today.
You're very welcome.
So I have the privilege of overseeing the success of our urban farm program and our market program, in addition to wearing an operations manager's hat, intaking volunteers and dispersing them, and interns as well. I'll take those deliverables from Allie and execute them via whatever the grant needs are, as it pertains to our farming operations and our food access programming. That's the bulk of my responsibilities.
Responsibilities. All right. So
I forgot something.
Okay, what?
And you have to edit it together to make it sound like I didn't.
No, actually, this sounds good.
Okay, great. I'm also
This is a conversation. This is
I'm
just a
also very
conversation.
importantly working on the Pawtucket Farm Wildlife Sanctuary.
Yes, we forgot about that part.
So that's more than half of my job, actually, is this large 22-acre project that we're working on with Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust. And
We should have a full episode on this.
Forthcoming episode
Forthcoming,
on Pawtucket
yeah.
Wildlife
So
Sanctuary. But essentially we just finished the schematic design phase. We're entering the I think it's the design development phase.
Design development.
Which means we're getting close to construction. So I'm working a lot on, right now I'm working most on fundraising for that project. But I'm also working on, we're starting to go visit the site very frequently.
Yeah.
Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust and Mass Audubon completed purchase on the land this January. And so now we're actually have a physical presence. Our lease, the Mill City Grows agricultural lease, actually just started on the site. And that's very exciting. So we're really off to the races this year. We're going to be doing just a minimal amount of farming, but we're hoping to build our community garden. We just started we're starting to work on a steering committee for the community garden. And hopefully there will be trails open to the public by the end of this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So now let's get back into the whole ED stuff and then these changes that are going. So I want to ask a more like not really work question, but also work question, knowing that this is like a different process, like a different, like I was saying earlier when I was talking with Courtney, it's kind of like not your like traditional form of leadership, right? So how has this process been for you? These new changes on directing the organization and all these things.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take this one, just something I've been stewing on, and since we've taken on this leadership position, the one thing that comes to mind for me ultimately is that you just go farther together. And I think what we've been learning in this process and continue to learn is that there's just a huge opportunity for collaboration and decision making that's more equitable. And even if it takes us longer to get to the answer, at least there are more people thinking about it, and I think that alleviates some pressure amongst all the leaders involved.
Yeah.
So I think how I feel about the experience thus far is that I just feel supported in all of this. And I think that is such a hard thing to have in a time when there's so much burnout in this particular industry. So Yeah, I mean, those are some of my few thoughts about our co-executive model.
No, I think that's pretty spot on. I think for me particularly, but I know that Dai and Courtney have also expressed none of us really wanted to do this job alone.
Yeah, I heard that.
It's a really big job. We watched Jessica do it for years, and saw the stress and sleeplessness that can come with it. I think having two other people, just like Dai said, to be able to bounce thoughts off of at the same level, to be able to check your own brain against two other brains is so helpful. But also literally just sharing the load. I think January was a really intense month for us as we settled into our new roles, and I think we tried to go to a lot of things together in January to sort of show this, I don't know, united partnership. Trying not to use war terminology. This day and age. But trying to show everyone, we've got a strong team here and we're working together. And as we moved into February, really just delegating things out to individuals has been really important and has felt like a huge relief of pressure. And I'm excited to see how that continues to evolve. And I also think how the decision-making process continues to evolve as we learn each other more and become more practiced in those roles. So it's been really exciting. I've also talked to a number of other nonprofits about this model. Some folks who are using it and some folks who are not. And I think it's a really interesting step forward for nonprofit management in terms of a more equitable process of management and also a more sustainable process of management for not burning out individuals, which is a big problem in our sector.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So, and that kind of elaborates into the next question. So it was really like a two-part question, So how is this model different, from other models you've worked on? But I kind of think about it, I think, in more like, as, directing and how is it, in a day-to-day kind of type situation, you know what I mean? I think you kind of like said something about that already, but, just kind of like elaborating on how different does it feel really in general, having like this multiple decision-making, process versus like, like we were saying, just having like one person pretty much being the point person for a lot of this.
I think we're really fortunate in the fact that all three of us are wearing different hats and we gravitate towards different specialties, and that's really worked out in our favor. And not to mention Jessica's she's staying on to help us with the transition for 6 months.
And that's huge.
That's a luxury that a lot of folks don't have in moments of leadership transition as big as this. So we've got a lot of things that are working out in our favor. And we know the hardest part of this is ultimately coming to a consensus on high level projects. And what's nice is because we've delineated what we're specialists in. Some of us are just trusting each other that we're making the right decision in the best interest of the organization. And I think this organization has been collaborative for so long in general that we know who to turn to for advice or who the proper folks are to collaborate with. So it doesn't feel too different than the culture that's already in existence here. Outside of, I think, there used to be a time where let's wait for the ultimate decision from
X or Y.
Right, X or Y. But now it's kind of like where we want to show that we're being collaborative and flatten this leadership so that all folks feel like they're stakeholders in all the decision making where appropriate.
I think this leadership process is for MCG. It's on a continuum of Jessica and I talking about flattening organizational leadership as far back as 2021. And all of the different ways that changes power and accountability within the organization. And I was putting together an org chart during the transition to see who would be supervising whom and things like that. And I was looking at it, I was like, oh my goodness, this is an incredibly flat organization. So we have, 3 executive directors, we have 2 people at the associate director level, and then we have, I think, 7 or 8 people at the manager level. And we have 20 employees altogether. So
Yeah.
that's very, very flat. And I think we're really looking at how do we have a culture of responsibility and accountability rather than how do we have hierarchy. And I think that's really interesting and important. And I'm excited to see like where we can continue to evolve that process, where we can continue to evolve collective decision making and consensus, and where it's also like not appropriate to do so. I think that's also a really important part of the conversation.
Word. I like that. So yeah, and I think right now I'm gonna move a little bit away of this kind of like direction model, and I think you already talked about it. About the PFAS. I mean, Pawtucket Wildlife Sanctuary. I like calling it PFAS. PFWS. But what are some other special projects that you're doing? I know that's like a big one. The new farm in collaboration with the Audubon and Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust. Is there anything else like a new exciting thing that's happening that y'all doing this season that it's like, ooh?
Oh yeah, I mean, there are a lot. Thanks for that. Thanks for bringing that up. Maybe some folks have heard in some previous podcasts, but we have a newly expanded greenhouse that's roughly about 4,000 square feet. It's rather large. So that gives us some additional indoor growing space over here on UMass Lowell's East Campus. One of the key things that I've been thinking about strategically is how do we fill in labor gaps in general. I think traditionally nonprofits are really successful in garnering support and buy-in from community members, and in particular in the volunteer space.
Yeah.
And wearing my volunteer manager's hat, something that I've been really working on is making sure that we're offering opportunities and volunteer opportunities in multiple ways, and having them be more consistent, and creating really strong partnerships with corporations and agencies that want to be involved in our work and really take that seriously. We've had some really good success, and we have already established some consistent scheduling for the season already to help out at the farm in those spaces. Nice. And in relation to the farm, one of the things that we talk about in food sovereignty is creating land access. And I think one of the things I'm really excited about is how do we expand or offer up the land that we have the privilege of growing on to our community members. This is, this program that we in-house call the Merrimack Valley Growers Aid Program is something that offers an opportunity for our community members to grow at a larger scale outside of a 4x10 community garden box. So, these folks come from agrarian backgrounds, and they have a wealth of knowledge and experience that can teach us in agriculture and help us connect a bit more intentionally and thoughtfully to this work outside of conventional Western agriculture practices, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, that's actually huge.
So, I think this journey started 2 or 3 years ago now, where we started to grow on less and less space in our large 4-acre site. So going into this year, we're only growing on only about half of the space, and the other half we're allowing community members grow what they want.
That's awesome.
And we'll just kind of see where the program grows from there.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah, I think everything that Dai said, I'm really excited about. I'm really excited about the ways in which our programming really changed and was very volatile is the word that's coming to mind during the pandemic. And we've come out of that time with some really key cornerstone programs that are either new or significantly different because of our shift from what I would call sort of like community engagement work to food sovereignty work during the pandemic. And I think that we've come out of that with a very food sovereignty and social justice, racial justice, economic justice focused work now. And so I'm really excited about continuing our food as medicine programming. I think that Courtney and James are doing really awesome things in that space. I'm excited about our second year of having our 3 big community events, the seed swap, the plant sale, and the harvest day at the farm.
Oh yeah, that's true.
I think that those are really awesome spaces to really invite our community, our neighbors in, and have them participate in the work that we're doing in really cool ways. I'm really excited about what the Community Gardens program is doing, really infusing a lot of community activities into the gardens. Getting back to that being a really strong community active place. And I think everything that's going on that Dai just talked about at the farm is really excellent. We're still making that road by walking. I think that every year we learn a lot in that space, and it's cool to watch it unfold.
Awesome. And like the last question I have for y'all, it's more like a philosophical question, right? But more like, I wouldn't say philosophical actually. Let's say kind of like visionary, all right? So what moving forward, and I've asked this to basically every executive director that I've interviewed, and I've interviewed every single executive director the organization has had. So what is your vision? Like, let's say, moving forward, what is kind of like, how do you picture the organization moving forward? You know what I mean? Like, that is like the big picture.
Big question.
Big question.
I'm a quilter
I
and
like that question.
a fiber artist. And when I really think sort of theoretically about Mill City Grows, I think about it sort of being stitched into the fabric of the city. And that we're present in the city's landscape, in the lives of families, in the schools, in the food system, and that we're present in a way that's really in collaboration with the people we're working with. And I really see that in a lot of our programming, in the way that people interact with us and know us and recognize us. And in the way our staff is also just really present in the city at large, and the amount of connections that we have across the city. And so I really often literally see in my head kind of this knitting together or stitching through different aspects of life across Lowell. And my vision for MCG is to just continue that process and continue to make us part of a fabric of what makes Lowell really beautiful.
And also, it kind of fits pretty well, Lowell being the textile mill city.
Textile
mill
capital of Massachusetts. I just made that up.
Capital Massachusetts.
Somebody might come for me on that.
Textile capital of Massachusetts. I like that. Well, it now is.
I mean, that's a lofty question, and I do a fair amount of reflection every day. For me personally, I think I'm not a fiber artist, but I'm a community advocate first. I think that's where my heart is, as being someone who's lived in this area for going on 3 decades. I am a devout Lowellian through and through. And if I don't have a purpose to get out of bed to serve this community, then this work would cease to be interesting to me. Interestingly enough, I'm not a farmer. Mm-hmm. I'm a home gardener at best, and a food enthusiast, and a pretty decent cook. And this work has really taught me a lot about myself and my own upbringing and my own journey with food insecurity and food justice and learning about food sovereignty. And, you know, I think where I'd like to see this organization continue to do is to continue to share its resources in the space of nonprofit privilege that we do have, in any possible way that we can, you know, whether that be through land access, sharing of food, creating more programs, creating more points of advocacy. In my head, I just see space sharing. I see big, long community dinners. I see celebrations and just folks actually like nurturing Mother Earth, and just like feeling good about it. I think everyone deserves to be outside for a few hours a week in this world that's like so stuck on, especially the Zoom era.
Yeah.
And I think everyone, I can't tell you how many times we take out corporate volunteers and they just feel like they've never been outside before.
Yeah.
And such literally a breath of fresh air. You know, I think we're really fortunate to have this, to save the last farm in Lowell. And I think that's going to give just a slice of that to every resident in this community. You know, we're talking about 20 acres of preservation here that otherwise would have been developed.
Exactly.
If there wasn't a larger conversation about that piece of land.
And to know that it didn't just start the other day, it's been...
it's like 10 years or
10
more
years plus,
in the process.
Yeah. Probably since we were starting as an org too,
Yep.
you know?
I mean, folks grow their own food, eat their own food if they want, you know, to each their own, but ultimately like being kind to each other, you know, ultimately. I always say think twice and be nice. And like, this work just kind of helps me become a better human in all of that. So, that's not like the most direct answer, but I think
it's very beautiful.
thanks.
Yeah.
Philosophical, you might say, right?
Well, that's the question.
I like the
that's a big question with a big answer.
I like the concept of providing an outlet for that outdoor space. I think that's a big thing. I think about when I think about Mill City Grows, and
for sure
think about this extremely paved environment that we're in Lowell, with limited opportunities for really getting outside and getting dirty. I think that you can go walk through a park pretty easily in the city, but getting dirty is a little bit harder. And I really appreciate that opportunity that Mill City Grows provides to the city.
Right.
Ditto.
All right. Well, that was the last question I got for you, and these are beautiful answers. But yeah, thank you so much for doing this, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Enrique.
Thank you, Enrique.
You're very welcome.